is Hugh Robertson, who is Head of Health and Safety at the TUC, just to talk about what the likely implications are of that Brexit vote on health and safety in the UK.
Thanks, Doug. I know a lot of you are sick to death of hearing about Brexit, and what I'm not going to do is sort of crystal ball gaze and say what's going to happen, because that's not really in the hands of me and or the Hazards Conference. It is going to happen, somewhere out there over the next few years. What I am going to do is say that what happens to workers, what happens to health and safety, has to be an important part of whatever happens. And so it's in that context that I'm going to say a little bit about it today. So we're going to have negotiations. Basically, what we've had is the Tories have said that they want to retain the free market, if you want. They want the right to continue trading with Europe as though almost Brexit never happened. That's what employers are saying. They say that's the most important thing for them. And on the other hand, what the EU are saying is, look, basically, we've got an internal market, and the free market is an important part of that, but also is the free movement of people. And of course, one of the things that was part of the campaign was that people didn't want the free movement of people. So we've got Theresa May, who was campaigning very heavily against it when she was Home Secretary, basically saying it's free market that's important. And we've got the European Commission, France, Germany, and most other European countries basically saying, you take one bit, you take the lot. And there's no alternative to it, which basically is still being in the EU. We've also got a lot of trade deals which are going on. Now, I'm not going to say too much about trade deals at the moment, mainly because there's a session on that this tomorrow afternoon, and I don't want to cover the same ground twice. But basically, the biggest thing is, of course, the transatlantic trade agreement partnership, which is called TTIP, which has got a lot of pretty nasty things in it. Now, once we leave the EU, because it probably won't have started before then, won't actually be part of TTIP. But what we will have is we will have a son of TTIP, which could actually be a lot worse than what's going to come out of TTIP, because the problem is that the nasty bits of TTIP, in particular in terms of agreements that allow companies to sue governments if they regulate and so on, natural fact, are being strongly opposed by a lot of the European governments like Germany and France, but actually being supported by the British government. So I worry quite a lot about that. But as I said, I'm not going to speculate too much on the outcome of the negotiations, and instead say what we've got to do to protect rights to health and safety, the rights that we've got at the moment. Now, nothing's going to happen over the next few months. Britain has said that it's not even going to give formal notice to the European Commission until possibly early next year, but certainly sometime next year. And basically what happens is you give 2 years notice of leaving. And that can, in exceptional circumstances, be extended. I mean, no one's ever done it before, so, the rules say it's got to be done within 2 years. But it can be extended. And in that period, everything that covers British workers at the moment will continue to apply. The Framework Directive, all the regulations will continue to apply. Britain will still be bound by anything that is imposed, and also things that come in over the next 2 years. There's very little that is going to come in. There's a couple of changes. There's some PPE changes, for instance, that are coming in. There may be some chemical stuff as well, in terms of carcinogens and so on. But in terms of the new stuff, Britain effectively, we don't want Britain actually playing a part in negotiating things that are going to not apply to Britain after it leaves, because it's always had a pretty negative effect. And I don't think other European countries are going to particularly want Britain actually going in there saying no to new regulations that aren't going to affect that. Britain was going to be the president of the EU next year, in actual fact, and after Brexit, initially, they said they're going to still be president, but wiser counsel actually sort of came out, and last week they did announce that they were going to be giving up the presidency, thank goodness, of that. Of course, unions themselves are still part of Brexit, of the European agency, the advisory committee, and various other things at European level, and we will continue to be an active part of that over the next couple of years. But during the campaign, we did try to make workers' rights an important part of it. TUC produced a mass of material on the threats to workers' rights from Brexit. There was also quite a detailed analysis of the implications of regulation, health and safety, so about 8 pages long, from the TUC we produced, plus a couple of fact sheets. But despite that, despite our best attempts, to be quite honest, not many people voted because of health and safety. I don't think that was really the deciding factor in terms of the vote on the final day. That said, there was a lot that was actually said during the debate that was quite important. I mean, Boris Johnson, who, God help us, is now our Foreign Secretary, said, we should go into these negotiations with a clear agenda to root out the nonsense of the social chapter, which basically includes all the health and safety stuff, the working time directive, the atypical work directive, and other job-destroying regulations. John Redwood, who is still alive, I didn't actually know that. But he was the architect of deregulation in the 1990s, the early 1990s in the Major government. He called for a social chapter opt-out, regardless of what happens. Priti Patel, who's now well up there in the cabinet, she wanted half the cost of social and employment legislation. Chris Grayling, who was the former Health and Safety Minister, not for long, and he didn't really do anything, but he called health and safety laws simply red tape during the campaign. Of course, Michael Gove, who's said a lot, among other things, was the battery of job-destroying European measures from the Working Time Directive to the varied provisions of the social chapter. In actual fact, the Working Time Directive is part of the social chapter, but as is all the health and safety stuff. But, what was interesting is that we've been hearing from government about how over the last, since 2010, even before that, under the Labour government as well, they were always talking about the sort of burden of EU regulations on business. And that was what was bad about Europe, this burden on business. Now, the people who were most vocal during the campaign in support of the EU were things like the CBI, the Federation of Small Businesses, the Engineering Employers Federation. They were all campaigning for a yes vote. So this thing about all these regulations, being strangling business, when business, in actual fact, were one of the strongest voices for the in-campaign, the idea they were over-regulated by the EU just shows what a myth that actually was. They actually wanted to retain that regulatory framework because it worked. Having a good, standard regulatory framework across Europe actually was important to them. Whatever we'd been told in the past, when the chips were down, they knew which side they were on, and they made that very clear. So since the campaign, well, we've now got